Hi there, I am Bonnie McCaffery, and thanks for coming back for another vidcast. I'm really excited because I have with me today Linda Schmidt, who happens to have 5 pieces in the show here at the International Quilt Festival. Tell me about Quilt University. What exactly is Quilt University?
Quilt University is an online university where anyone anywhere around the world can sign on to online classes that are really relatively cheap, and there's 120 different ones of them. I have 6 classes on Quilt U right now, and it's just you get a password and you go into the site, you say hi to everyone on the site, you talk to people all around the world.
Yeah.
The class starts on Saturday. A week later, another one comes up, another one comes up. They all stay up 3 weeks past the end of the class time, and that whole time you get to send in pictures of your work. I critique it. The other people say, oh, what a wonderful job you're doing. And then at the end, you can also join Quilt University's virtual online art show.
Oh.
They have a finishing gallery. If you don't finish up on time, you can do the free finishing gallery and show everybody in the world what you've done.
Yeah.
It's like an interactive book.
Yeah. What are some of the classes that you're teaching? Because they're just fascinating titles. I want to take one.
One of them is Filament Fantasy. That class is all about making a heart sampler, but while you're learning the techniques, you're learning how to deal with a difficult thread.
Right.
Another one is called Elements in Fabric. We do earth, wind, fire, and water. We make waves and a forest fire and an earth scene with a waterfall and an air scene. And another one is a 12-week-long landscape sampler. Another one is a mermaid jacket, and another is a mermaid vest. So I think that makes 5 or 6.
Yeah, a great concept. That's a neat thing.
Yeah.
Now, we're standing in front of one of your quilts, and this is a great quilt. Tell me about this quilt.
Well, my husband is a Porsche-holic. It's sort of like being a Faber-holic, but with cars.
Does he collect them?
He has one Porsche, but
Okay.
his hobby is taking his car to various places and taking pictures of it.
Okay.
We were going to go to what's called Porsche Parade, which is a big gathering of all kinds of Porsche people, and there's an art show at the Porsche Parade. So I picked my favorite pictures that he had taken around the Bay Area. So the whole background scene of this piece is a photo of China Basin in fabric, and then the various places. This is the Legion of Honor. That Dr. Porsche, Wolfgang Porsche, was at the parade, and he's the guy in charge who owns, the whole family owns this thing. And Patrick said, we should have him sign your quilt. I said, why should he sign my quilt? It's my quilt. But everybody says, you should have him sign it. It'll double the value right there. So right in the middle of the Legion of Honor is Dr. Porsche's signature. In making this piece, there are a lot of different techniques. I use Angelina fiber and puff paint. And over here in this section, you'll see melted cracked ice and tinsel and Angelina fiber and painted melted cellophane. And the columns here are made with puff paint and then painted. A lot of this is applique. All the cars are hand painted, and they're all set back into this scene in their own little scenes where they blend right into the landscape.
Linda is going to do a little demo for us, and so we're going to get to see how she plays with some of this tinsel. Okay, Linda, I see that here is a piece you have in progress with this gorgeous waterfall, and you're going to show us how to make that.
Yes. I start with a background piece of fabric. I turn all the edges under because I'm just that sort of a person. I have to turn the edges under. And you can sew this to your quilt with invisible stitching right away if you want, or you can do it separately and then add it later. So then I took a piece of Misty Fuse. Now Misty Fuse is a very, very fine webbing. It doesn't stick to anything at this point because you're going to need the heat to make it stick. I cut it just a little bit bigger than the waterfall background itself. And then there's some very neat stuff called roving. This happens to be soy roving, and the soy roving looks like hair, but it's softer than that. So what we want is the impression of water flowing over rocks. So water tends to flow when it comes off a waterfall. It doesn't flow in a nice, neat, straight line. It bounces on stuff and hits other stuff. And you're going to want to tuck the top edge of the roving over the top of the cliff. And then you want to spread that out so as if it is sort of flowing in sheets and bouncing over rocks. And this is just your background layer. So what you want is to have a little bit of the roving flowing over the edges, a little bit out of control. You want a little mist chaos is one of my favorite things. Especially at the bottom of a waterfall, you're going to have chaos. You're going to have water bubbling up and flowing over, hitting rocks and bouncing off. So what you see there is all this misty roving. And then on top of that, we want that to stick. When we fuse this together, that would stick, but there's no point in fusing it yet because we're not done. So then we took out another piece of misty fuse. This time it's white. Lay that on top of there. Again, a little bit's outside the boundaries. It's not really going to matter if it overflows, and actually that's kind of good. Now waterfalls, they go in shoots. They just shoot down from the top to the bottom. And that's where you bring in your Angelina and your tinsel. Oops, this way. Angelina and tinsel, which comes in a fiber, and Bonnie's talked about this a lot. But I take this, actually in the big waterfall behind us, I used 4 different shades of what looks like white crystallina because it comes in 4 different colors. And you take that Angelina, which will bond to itself perfectly well. The problem is that it doesn't bond to anything else. But with the misty fuse behind that, it will bond to our background. So you just start shooting on tinsel on top of that and make it go in sort of waves. And in with the misty fuse, you can add some tinsel. There's the tinsel package. And you can pull this stuff out. It too comes in several different colors, depending on how gaudy you're feeling that day. You can use the purple violet. I think this is the iridescent blue. It just happens to be the iridescent blue, but you see it's much more vibrant than the Angelina is. But you can mix the two together, and you can add in waves of Angelina and tinsel. And then when you're done with that, you take your iron and another piece of parchment paper. This is parchment paper underneath, and you lay that on top, and you take a fairly hot iron, and then you just smash it all together. And you have to be sure with tinsel and misty fuse that you don't do it too long. A few seconds is quite sufficient. Churn. I mean, Angelina and tinsel will turn really ugly colors if you hold it on too long.
Yeah, I find that they get dull if it's too hot and you hold it on too long.
If you look at it now, it's all shimmery and shiny, and it looks like you've got water falling over rocks.
So let's take a look at another piece that you have here.
All right.
What do you got going on in here?
Well, what's going on in here is I'm trying to create a beach scene, a chaotic crashing of waves up on the shore. And I find that the more materials that I can bubble up and use and meld together, the closer I can get to that chaos. So in here we have a lot of different things. Right here in the background you have some more tinsel and Angelina fibers that have been fused together, and then you can just add it wherever you want in your waves. You can also cut it with a wood burning tool to shape any shape that you want to shape it into.
Yeah.
And then those are what's inserted in between these rocks to give that impression of all of these waves splashing up on the rocks.
Okay, let's see how you make these bubbly wave things.
Those are a couple different substances. This particular one right here is melted painted cellophane. So you go to the grocery store and you get yourself a bouquet of flowers, and you take a piece of cellophane and you paint it with pearlescent paint. So this is just straight pearlescent paint painted onto cellophane you get at the grocery store. And then you turn it upside down so the paint side is down on your ironing board between 2 pieces of parchment paper to start melting it.
Oh, with an iron.
With an iron, but just held above the parchment paper. But it will it'll only get this, the holes will only get this big when you do that, and that's not what you want. You want smaller bubbles than that. Okay, that's so neat. You get overall big bubbles like this, and then you have to take something like a heat gun. This is a heat gun or embossing tool, and you turn it onto it, and again from the back, you will start getting little teeny tiny bubbles like this. So as those bubbles get smaller, they will also start to disintegrate. And sometimes you might have to smash it with your iron again a little bit to get it flat. So
that's pretty neat.
That's from the back. And then from the front, what you have are these beautiful bubbles, iridescent bubbles, that you can just rip off. You can cut them or rip them, but I usually rip them, and then I just use them wherever I want in my project.
Wow.
And you can sew through this, and believe it or not, it is machine washable. Not machine washable, but hand washable.
It's hard to believe that that's the same thing as this.
Right.
What is this?
This is actually a piece of fabric that has been covered with puff paint, and then I dribbled mica chips and glitter in it, and then I put what we call liquid beads on top of that. This is the package that the liquid beads comes in, and it is a clear little tiny beads that have glue in them. So when you smear them on, you simply take them out of the jar and smear them on wherever you want, and they stick. And they don't have to go through and bead them. They just stick on there, and you can just add them wherever you like.
You're not afraid to use anything, are you?
No. This is a kitchen sink school of quilting.
I like that. Kitchen sink school of quilting.
This is when I was working on my Elements in Fabric class. In that class online, you learn how to use puff paint to do rocks. You take a puff paint and spread it on fabric, and you dribble microchips and sand in it, and then you let it dry, and then you heat it with the heat gun and puff it up with a heat gun. Here we have you starting with water way back in the forest with sunlight shining on it, and as you come closer, these are fabrics that are turned under edges here, but here we start to get a little action because we've inserted our puff paint rocks. We've added some, this is cracked ice again. All these ripple shiny pieces are cracked ice, and then in the front we even have this shimmer right here is from fused tinsel.
Oh my gosh, you got one more piece working here. It looks like water.
So this is basically a whole cloth quilt. The background of it was painted first with puff paint, and then with fabric paint on top of that. I let that dry, and then sheet of paint sticks on top of that. And then we created that same sort of chaos. Here's iridescent cracked ice. Here is melted painted cellophane in here. Here are iridescent fabrics that have been bubbled up with the heat gun, the same way we did the other fabrics. And again, we have a whole bunch of those liquid beads right in here.
And thank you so much for doing this. It's been really neat to give people a peek at your work.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you all for joining me, and I hope you'll come back next month and see what I have for you then. Thanks for being with me.